silver should be trading, in my view, anywhere between $75 and $120 an ounce.
Right.
Uh, the cost per ounce is a number, who cares what the number is, because we can't sustain silver mines at the current prices for very long.
Hey friends, thanks so much for pushing play. As always, you know we appreciate it. Without you, there would be no us in the Truth Media. I have on the line Keith Neumeyer. He is the founder and CEO of First Majestic Silver, one of the biggest silver producers in the world and the second largest pure silver producer in Mexico. His first company was First Quantum Minerals, which is a billion-dollar company to this day. And Keith is also the chairman of the new mining venture, First Mining Finance, which features noteworthy investors and heavy hitters like Eric Sprott and Doug Casey. Keith, it's a real pleasure to have you on the line.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate your time.
Keith, I've been following you here, a lot of us have in the alt media, especially in the precious metal space, for better than a year. Guys, you may recall that Keith Neumeyer is the CEO who back in October of 2014 had the courage to declare war on the paper futures market by daring to announce that silver producers should create a mini cartel and pick 1 month in 2015 to withhold physical silver production from the market to punish the paper manipulators. Mr. Neumeyer, I really ought to ask, how is that going? Have you heard back from any of the other primary silver miners' CEOs? Is anybody going to join you in this daring, courageous venture to withhold silver production?
Unfortunately not. We're kind of alone in this whole battle, it seems. I did make that call, and I was optimistic. I actually chose June of 2015 because June is generally a cyclical low for gold and silver. If you go back 30 years, you look at June, it seems to always be the weakest month of the year. So I figured, okay, why not? Let's pick June. And unfortunately, I didn't have a single reply or a single phone call or email back from any other silver mining company executive or CEO. So it was a bit of a disappointment for sure.
Well, you know what? I have to ask you this. Where do you find the courage to speak this truth when nobody else in your industry is doing it? And I guess I should preface that by saying not nobody else. Eric Sprott has been openly talking about manipulation for a long time. One of my good friends, Jeff Nielsen, writes for the Sprott blog on a daily basis, and he talks about the Rothschild One Bank. He talks about the manipulation in every single article. So I know Eric Sprott has a lot of courage. Where do you find the courage to embark on this journey? Because it has to be a lonely journey when you're the sole truth teller in the precious metals mining space.
Yeah, I know it is frustrating, and I think it just comes to my background. I'm not a geologist. I'm not an engineer. I'm more of a finance guy. I worked in the banks in Canada and in the '80s, and on the trading side, and learned a lot about the industry. Learned a lot about how things work out there, and from there, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. All I've done is basically work for myself my entire life, and built a couple back-to-back quite large companies, and I've got big vested interest in everything I do. I put my own money where my mouth is, and I'm very aligned with shareholders. When we spend a dollar, I look at, is this going to be in the best interest of the people that own our stock? My responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, is to the shareholders who own our company, and so I look at myself as being very aligned to the same reasons why shareholders own our stock. They want to make a profit when they buy our stock, and so I need to try to make a profit when I make a decision in the company I'm active in or operating. So I think that is often or not often the case, and maybe not just in mining, but obviously mining is my expertise. So I know mining very well, but you're dealing with people that don't own stock in their companies. They are geologists or engineers. They don't understand financial markets. In many cases, I'm quite shocked that when I have discussions with people in the industry, that they don't really even understand the commodity that they're selling. They just sell a commodity, and they don't know what the consumption rates are. In lots of cases, they don't even know where their product is used. So to me, it's shocking, but it is what it is, and I just continue to do what I do and stay focused, and I hope my efforts, my little efforts, have an impact ultimately.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the manipulation of the precious metals via the paper markets. It should be noted that you joined Ted Butler in early 2015 in decrying the clear and present manipulation of silver via the paper markets on the Comex, saying specifically, and I quote, "Big changes in positions on the Comex are by speculators and commercials acting as speculators and not by those engaged in bona fide hedging. Such massive speculation in Comex silver futures may not be in keeping with the spirit and intent of commodity law and may suggest something is wrong with the price discovery process, since real producers and consumers of silver don't appear to be represented," end quote. I think that's very important to remind people about that CFTC letter that you were a part of, because the CFTC is tasked as the regulator to prevent manipulation and criminality in the paper markets, and it does not appear to want to do its job. Has the CFTC become nothing more than a fascist arm of the banks at this point?
Wow. I'm not sure if I should actually comment on that, but I think the regulators as a whole, are controlled by the banks, and I think that's pretty, clear. We've seen the LIBOR manipulation, we've seen the forex manipulation. Right. It's hard to believe that the regulators did not know all this activity was occurring. It's very easy for a regulator to go in and check trades on a day, and if there's ever anything unusual, they know instantly, who's behind those trades if they just go and look. So, trading of this type over years and years and years, it's hard to believe that a regulator does not know that this is occurring. But eventually a whistleblower comes to speak out, or something happens where the regulator has to step in, just to show the fact that they're doing their job. And we saw that in these two cases. And unfortunately, we know that the gold and silver market are very tiny markets. So, it's very easy for these same, banks, these same traders, to do these spoof kinds of trades, or these transactions in these marketplaces, which, the regulators have come out clearly and said are manipulation.
Yeah. Well, it's really frustrating, too, when you see the regulators finally come out and essentially do a dog and pony show. And at the very worst, the banksters, the cartel, get a slap on the wrist, essentially. They get a slap on the wrist. Trillions of dollars in LIBOR manipulation, and nobody goes to jail. And I'd probably add that nothing really ever changes. One of the concerns that we see as it pertains to this endless paper manipulation of physical silver prices via the paper markets is the decimation of the mining companies themselves. You need look no further than the Huey Index to see that the mining companies have been decimated. Meanwhile, the stock market indexes, all of the other stock market indexes, are hitting new highs. That really doesn't add up when you stop and think about a world flooded with fiat paper. And, the backstop against that to protect yourself would be physical precious metals. That's just one of the values of physical precious metal, the monetary value of silver, the monetary value of gold. I was talking to Brian London of the Gold Newsletter the other day, and I think he got it wrong when he said to me that $8 or $9 silver is the intrinsic value, and anything above that is the monetary premium. I tend to disagree with him there, because I think the cost of producing 1 ounce of physical silver and pulling it out of the ground is a lot more than $8 or $9 an ounce. What do you think? What do you say the cost of physical production is for 1 ounce of physical silver?
Well, you've said a lot there, and I'd like to try to comment on all your topics or points. First off, the COMEX was set up, for commercials and, for the buyers and sellers of the metal, for the physical metal. So for the mining companies, to put hedges in places for long-term periods so they could, plan their businesses accordingly and know what their cash flows are going forward to make proper plans. And same goes for the consumers, the Toyotas, the Sonys, the Apples of the world, who are huge consumers of silver. They also want to hedge their costs, because they want to know how much it's going to cost to build an iPhone for the next 12 months, and so they need to have their proper options and calls in place to make their proper hedges, and that's what COMEX was set up for.
Right.
but and that's fine, and I got no issue with that, and that's the way it should be. But unfortunately, what you have is mining companies produce 850,000 ounces of silver a year. That's 850,000. No, pardon me, 800. The mining companies produce 850 million ounces per year. That's it.
Right.
Consumption of silver is a little over 1.1 billion ounces of silver. So there's a deficit there of 250,000.
250 million.
So 250 million. Yeah, right. There's a deficit there of 250 million ounces a year, and that is made up by recycling and financial hoards. But you could look at the ETF inflows. You can look at recycling. Recycling's been dropping like crazy due to the price, and the ETF inflows have not dropped. Investment demand and the Eagles and the Canadian Maple Leafs are still very much in demand. So if you look at the overall supply-demand fundamentals of silver's been in a deficit for many, many years. And you go back to the 1980s, where at the peak of the photographic market, there was a countable amount of silver on the ground in commercial bars of around 5 billion ounces. Today, that's 1 billion ounces. So over the last 30 years, industry has consumed 4 billion ounces of silver and is gone. Very little of it's recycled. Very few people recycle their iPads or their cell phones or their computers. It gets thrown in the garbage and waste dumps. It's never to be discovered or to be reprocessed again. It's history. So and that consumption is not going anywhere. So that billion ounces is dropping like a rock. Yet at the same time, the price of the metal's been dropping. Now, if you look at the combined ounces in the ground on a global basis, there's an accepted number of 16-to-1 ratio between gold and silver.
Right.
So if you use 16-to-1, at today's gold price, you come up with $75 an ounce for silver. But the mining rate is 10-to-1.
That's right.
So at 10-to-1, you're looking at $120 for silver prices. So silver should be trading, in my view, anywhere between $75 and $120 an ounce. Right. The cost per ounce is a number. Who cares what the number is, because we can't sustain silver mines at the current prices for very long. We've been laying off people. We'll continue to lay off people. If metal prices stay where they are, you're going to see shutdowns. I know of several mines in the silver space, the gold space, the copper space that are in distress right now. The world needs these metals. I've said many times that mining is the most important industry in the world. Without mining, everything shuts down. You don't have a car, you don't have a cell phone, you don't have a house to live in if without mining. So at these metal prices, investment is history. Mining companies aren't doing anything. Yeah. So we're going to have a supply crunch in the next couple of years, which will make the last one look ridiculous. And if metal prices don't go higher in the next couple of years, we're going to wake up in a day where there's just no metal around, and we're going to have $8 copper and $100 silver, and that will happen in my view because the investment is just not happening.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you talk about the real silver to gold ratio in the historic silver to gold ratio of closer to 15, 16 to 1, and the real ratio coming out of the ground at closer to 9.5, 10 to 1. In the Wall Street paper manipulation puts the ratio at 75 to 1. In my view, there is no better opportunity in terms of buying an asset at much lower price than to what it's actually worth than physical silver. Been saying it for a long time, and I believe it to be true. The one enemy against that thesis, though, is the criminal manipulation without end. It is the ultimate fly in the ointment, because until these guys are disallowed to do what they do, or until they stop on their own, it's hard to see this price ever bouncing back. What does your crystal ball say? Is there any way that we ever get back to a real-world fair price for an ounce of physical silver?
Yeah. I have to have faith in the market, and I think that all markets eventually come back to the mean. Maybe you could argue $50 was too much at the time back in April 2011. It happened very quickly, and maybe industry was not prepared for it. I know the solar panel industry back then was having challenges with cost increases due to the consumption of silver required for solar panels, and there's several solar panel companies going bankrupt, if you recall at the time,
Right.
because they just simply couldn't make a profit selling the panels. And other industry, I'm sure, was having challenges as well with the price. And um, so the metal price may have had to come down, but it swung too far the other way. And now what happened at $50 silver is happening at $16 silver. So these pendulums swing, and I think we've seen the bottom. 1435 silver last fall, last fall of 2014. We've been kind of hovering around this $16 to $18 trading range since then, and we're just basically doing a chart consolidation as far as I'm concerned. And interestingly enough is that when this market does decide to turn or start to go higher, the base that we're starting from is so much higher than it was before. And we don't know when that event's going to occur. Obviously, I'm putting First Mining Finance together, it being very opportunistic. And one side of me says I'd love to see this market stay weak for another year or two because I could buy a bunch of assets on the cheap. But on the other side, I'm the CEO of First Majestic Silver, so I'd love to see higher silver prices tomorrow to take some pain away and start reinvesting in some of our assets to grow them again. But whenever this does occur, we started at $6-7 silver and went to 50. This time we're going to be starting at whatever number, $16-17 silver, and when it moves, it's going to move big time in my view.
Yeah. Well, one of my questions was to ask you your opinion about silver as a monetary metal, but I think we covered that because you're kind enough to bring up the historical silver to gold ratios. Of course, silver was money for 5,000 years along with gold, and we still see silver trade and track with gold in the charts. Sometimes it gets hit much harder on the downside, but when gold has a big up day, silver goes up. And you look at those charts, and they really mirror each other to a large extent. So silver as a monetary metal cannot be underestimated, especially in a world where Warren Buffett says the derivatives bomb is still a weapon of mass destruction. In a world where last week we heard about a $140 billion bond fund going to cash as it braces for bond market collapse, as we prepare for inflation and what I think is inevitable hyperinflation of the dollar. What do you see for the future as it pertains to the global economy, the long-term health of the dollar, Keith, and ultimately the monetary metal silver as a hedge against all of the worst case scenarios? What do you see for the future?
Well, it's tough to say. I would have never actually guessed that we would have gone from $50 silver to $16 silver. And, at the time, I thought silver was just going to continually go. If I had a crystal ball, I would have sold my entire position in First Majestic and bought it all back today. And I'd own 3 times as much stock as I did back then. And I'd look like a hero. But anyways, obviously that didn't happen. But I'm a bull on the metal. I think it's going to, do a lot higher. I've said triple-digit silver. I don't know how many times. At $16 silver, it's a lot harder to say than it was at $30-40 silver. But we need a financial reset. China's become a big player in the financial markets, and they want their currency floated internationally. They're working to accomplish it. I think they're going to be successful getting it linked to the SDRs. Once the IMF votes later this year, I think it would be foolish for the U.S. to deny China that right. I think it would cause even further problems in the world. So I think that will occur, and I think that's a stepping stone to a new financial system down the road. But China's having a good old time right now, and they've got the largest hoard of U.S. dollars, and just a year ago the U.S. dollar was a couple of years ago the U.S. dollar was looking like it was going to break 70 cents on the index, and it got over par. I think it hit a 102 or something on the index at its peak. I know it's around 95 right now, but so the Chinese are laughing it up. They're buying oil at 50% discount. They're buying silver at a 70% discount. They're buying gold at a 30-40% discount with dollars that have gone up 20%. So I'm not sure the Chinese are in any rush to start backing currencies or SDRs with metals, but I do ultimately think there will be a collapse in the financial system because of the amount of debt that there is out there. These governments just can't simply pay this debt back, and there's going to be a point in time, sometime in the future, where all these governments get together and say, okay, we're going to just wipe the debt clean, start over, create a new financial system, and that financial system will look a lot different than it is today. But I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. There's too many things that have to happen along the way. But the Chinese won't be able to buy gold at these prices for much longer, in my view.
Yeah, and your point is a really good one. There are things happening along the way, though, that have been happening. We can see the de-dollarization in process, the foundation of the AIIB, the foundation of the BRICS Bank. India is on track to import 33% of the world's physical silver supply in 2015. That's after taking down 25% of the world's supply in 2014. Meanwhile, we see the guys at the CFTC in the mainstream Mockingbird media here in the United States, and I suppose there in Canada, say, hey, nothing to look at here, guys. The dollar's great. The future looks great. The economy's doing really, really well. So just keep your eye on the ball. But that's not what the rest of the world is doing. There are changes happening all around us. I'm just not sure that most of our friends, neighbors, and colleagues are aware of just how dire and tenuous the future looks for the dollar.
Yeah, the average person on the street is losing their wealth. They're losing their wealth to the system, and unfortunately, the West is losing assets to foreign governments in many forms, whether it's commercial real estate or whether it's gold or silver. Assets are flowing outside of the West, and unfortunately, the world is changing, and people need to be aware of that change to protect themselves. And I think having precious metals in their portfolio, I think, is very critical.
Okay. Well, last question for you. I'm not a big mining stocks guy. I've been really beat up by anybody who's had mining stocks has been beaten up for the most part. It's hard to imagine anybody having become a multimillionaire over the last 4 years on the backs of mining stocks. With that said, can you just tell us a little bit about First Mining Finance? I'd be a fool not to ask you, since you have $2 billion companies under your belt and you're starting a new one here with the involvement of guys like Eric Sprott and Doug Casey. What is First Mining Finance, just real briefly, and tell us a little bit about it, would you?
Yeah, for sure. Just going back to your earlier part of that comment, mining stocks, will overperform or underperform the metal, and when the metal is coming down, mining stocks will come down a lot further, and when metal is moving, a good mining company, a good mining stock like First Majestic Silver, for example, outperform silver on a 2.5 to 1 ratio for a period of 3 years in a row. So you get that leverage, but you have to be selective. You have to buy the better mining companies, and they can really outperform the metals. So as an investor, you obviously, in my view, you should have some gold and silver in your portfolio, but also try to find the good mining companies out there, and always look at management first, because that's key. And in the case of First Mining Finance, I think I put together an extraordinary management team, led by myself as chairman, and I spent the last 2 years putting this company together. It's a mineral bank. It's quite a lot different than anything else that out there. It's a new concept. It's not an explorer. It's not a developer. It will not be a producer. We came public on April 6th of this year. We did the IPO at 40 cents. We came public with 18 projects. We went hostile on a company almost within weeks of us going public, and that transaction, which is our first big deal that we pulled off, will close on July 3rd, or is expected to close on July 3rd. We've got a couple other transactions that we're looking to pull off in the next 2, 3, 4 months, and I think we've got a pretty good chance of at least getting one of those done over that period of time. And we're building a bank, and we're looking at buying good quality assets, high grade, good jurisdictions, easily permittable, high quality, early cycle assets that are high grade. And over the next 12 to 24 months, depending on how long this market remains broken, the bigger we'll get. So we want to build this portfolio up substantially, and we're working very hard to do it. So I'm pretty excited about it, and the stock's trading around 40 cents still. It's almost trading basically at the same price that it IPO'd at. And if there's anything further that people want to see, just go to the website, www.firstminingfinance.com.
Okay. It sounds a little bit like a mining hedge fund.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I look at it like an ETF because these fund managers, and you said earlier about people losing money in the sector, because a lot of people have lost a lot of money in the mining sector, and a lot of these big institutions, they want to own metals, but they don't know how to own them. So they've been buying ETFs, they've been buying physical ETFs as well as equity ETFs, but they don't get the leverage that a good mining company can give them because their investment is blended. So they try to buy these one asset companies, and they've been very unsuccessful doing it. So we're giving them a great management team, a portfolio of assets spread over multiple metals, multiple jurisdictions, and we've done all the technical work for them. So if you're a fund manager who wants to back a good team with good assets and avoid the same mistakes of the past of investing in single asset companies with marginal management, then this is a great avenue for them to invest on top of their other investments.
Well, Mr. Neumeyer, we really appreciate your time. It's been a really great conversation. I've been wanting to have this with you since you really came public and decided to take on the paper manipulators back in 2014. I thought it was a courageous thing to do, and it's just a real pleasure to finally get you on the line. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and I'll keep plugging away, and hopefully we get a response from the CFTC. If we do, I'll obviously talk about it further.
All right, well, we look forward to that. Guys, our guest has been Keith Neumeyer, the founder and CEO of First Majestic Silver, and he's also the chairman of the new mining venture, First Mining Finance. Thanks for coming on, Keith.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. And guys, thank you for your support at sgtreport.com, thelibertymill.com, and thephaser.com. Real news 24/7. Have a terrific week. Bye-bye.